Good morning. Thank you for coming. 29 years ago, I met my wife right over there for the first time. I was in V Hall, she was in T Hall, if you remember Deseret Towers, back before they razed them to the ground. A moment of great sadness for us personally. Actually, the Morris Center, when it went down, that was the worst, because then you had to eat there all you want. That was wonderful. Yeah, that was 1990 when we met. I had just come home from my mission, and she was a freshman here at BYU. We got married in 91. I graduated in 93 with my bachelor's. We had one child, our oldest, obviously. At that point, in 95, I got my master's here. She graduated with her bachelor's. We had 2 children at that time. And in 99, I got my doctorate. We had 4 children at that time. By the time I finished my doctorate, we moved to Vancouver, Washington, and have been there ever since. I've been a psychologist in private practice since that time. And the gospel has the greatest insights into our mental health issues. I'm just convinced of it. And having got all my education at BYU was remarkable, because I was able to learn that. I got taught from bishops and stake presidents who were also psychologists, and I got to learn that. And it was a great, great blessing. I didn't want to do my doctorate at BYU. I thought I wanted to teach here. And so I needed to get my doctorate somewhere else, because they didn't want people with just this kind of singular view of things. The Lord had very different plans. So I'll teach here today. I'm teaching at BYU. Hey, it's officially checked, right? Check that box off. So I want to talk today a little bit about how to understand and reduce anxiety in students using gospel principles. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between fear and anxiety first. Anxiety is similar to fear. They're not the same necessarily. Fear is biological. It's natural. You hear about fight or flight sometimes, right? When you're in a fearful situation, your body's either getting ready to take on the threat or to get the heck out of there, and so it gets excited. The blood flow starts going, the central nervous system kicks into gear, which is a wonderful situation. For example, if you're being chased by a bear, right? And hopefully you don't fight in that situation, you choose to run. You heard the story about the 2 guys that come across the bear in the wilderness, and the bear starts coming after him. The one guy takes off his backpack, so put his running shoes on instead of his hiking boots. And the guy says, "You're crazy, you can't outrun that bear." He says, "I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you." So bear situation, obviously you want to have a lot of fear in that. Anxiety is a psychological construct. That's the American Psychiatric Association defines anxiety. If you're familiar with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, it's in its 5th edition. It's the list of everything that can possibly go wrong with your mental health. I mean, any crazy you can find is in that book. If it's not in that book, it doesn't exist. We don't acknowledge it. And anxiety's been around for a long time. You describe it. It's similar to that fight or flight response, like when you're being chased by a bear. The problem is that anxiety is often a defense against perceived threats. A bear is a perceived threat as well, but it's a legitimate threat as well. So I'm talking about the difference between legitimate and perceived threats. So some people have that same level of anxiety as the bear coming out of the woods as they do walking into a crowd of people. Right? Now that's a perceived threat, because there's no danger of you walking into that group. You're not going to die. No bear is going to tear you to pieces if you walk into a crowded group. Devin mentioned we've been to Disneyland a lot. We just got back. I took Kristen for her birthday about a week ago, and we wanted to see the new Star Wars edition that was there. It was awesome. It was so good. My brother's an Imagineer there. He's building one of the marquee rides in the Star Wars land as well. And we stayed in the Disneyland Hotel, which we had never done before. And because it was her birthday, they put us on the top floor corner. We had 2 balconies, one that you can see all of Anaheim, you can see all the parks on the other side. I get anxiety standing on the balcony, so I'm looking down and it's 14 floors down. Is that a perceived threat or a legitimate threat? That's legit, right? Because if I step off that balcony, I'm going to die, right? Right. But when I was waiting in line with about probably 5,000 other people to get into Galaxy's Edge, which is what they call it, if I had that same amount of anxiety, that's a perceived threat, right? So, is it good or bad? The answer is yes. Yes, it is. Depends upon the situation. Moderate temporary amounts of anxiety can be motivating. They can, right now I've got a moderate amount of anxiety standing here in front of you. That's good. It's keeping me on my game. It's helping me think straight. Extreme chronic amounts of anxiety can be debilitating. The body is only designed to have that kind of fight or flight response for temporary times, usually in amounts of minutes, like just long enough to get away from the bear or long enough to fight your foe, that sort of thing. When people experience chronic anxiety, they feel this way all the time. And it's kind of like a car engine, you know, if you need to accelerate past someone and so you really hit the gas and you get up into the red line, you know, you're 6,000 or 7,000 RPMs, the car can do that. If you do that all the time to that engine, if you run that engine at 7,000 RPMs all day, every day, it's not going to last. And it's going to break down a lot sooner. It's designed to run those more moderate ranges. Our bodies are designed to run in those more moderate ranges. And that, when we have chronic anxiety, it's hard. It is difficult. This is some of you may have seen this. It's called the Yerkes, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's been 29 years since I've been in graduate school. Yerkes and Dodson arousal curve. And some of you have probably seen the one that goes like this, which is in most textbooks. They actually found this as well, which is interesting. You've got performance over here on the y-axis and arousal on the x-axis. And arousal you could talk about anxiety. So with low anxiety, you can have weak performance. As anxiety increases, you hit a sweet spot right there. This is for difficult tasks. Hit that sweet spot. As it increases, then performance tends to go down as well. For simple, repetitive tasks, they found it didn't matter at all. You could have crazy high anxiety. All I'm doing is stuffing envelopes, you know. But when I was in graduate school, I loved going into the office and shredding paper because I was so tired of thinking. And I was just thinking all the time, and the secretaries never had time to shred the paper, so they'd get these stacks, and I'd say, can I just shred your paper? And, you know, for an hour, just putting that paper in the shredder, it felt so great, because I was accomplishing something, right? I could see the stack get smaller, but it didn't take any brain power. It took zero brain power. So if I was super anxious, I probably could have shredded a ton of paper, right? You know, I got through the whole stack in 30 minutes. But writing my dissertation, I wanted to be right there. Then I get here and I start to get overwhelmed and I can't process it. So some anxiety is good, depending on the situation. In educational settings, there's automatic amounts of anxiety, right? It's just the way it is. Some of the things I think, and these are just my ideas, that why learners may experience anxiety, they can be worried about their overall performance, how they're going to be judged by themselves. You know, we kind of think, we have these ideas about what we are and what we're about, and sometimes we think we're good at something, and then you get an education, you find out if you are or not, right? And so you kind of confirm or disconfirm your own beliefs, and that can be something that's stressful to people. You're being judged by others, even by your peers. You know, in the educational setting, you're being judged by your teachers, right? I turn in my best work and I get a C, right? And then you got to do that. You got to do it in education. You can't change grades to zebras and unicorns and stuff like that. We have to have some sort of hierarchy that we do, but it naturally comes with a bit of fear and trepidation. I think students are worried about the future. They're worried about what is, you know, is this going to get me in, you know, I remember when Jordan, our oldest, they just graduated from BYU. He got his degree in information systems, and I remember when he was like in the 6th grade or in the 7th grade, and he got a B on something, I'm freaking out, and oh my gosh, you know, this is the beginning of the end, right? His future is spoiled. I'm a much better dad now, believe me. We have 2 kids left at home. One just graduated high school. We have 5 boys and then a daughter, and she's the only one left at home, and she is spoiled. Or being a disappointment to people that they admire, teachers, even their parents. Even without setting the expectation, they may feel disappointed. Our 3rd son, who's a student here, he's going to start his junior year in the fall. In high school, he was having quite a bit of anxiety, so we sent him to a counselor, and he had some good talks with him. And the counselor brought Kristen and I in at one point and said, just want to let you know what we're talking about with your son. He had permission to do so, and he said he's really worried about disappointing you guys. He doesn't feel like you can live up to your expectations. And I said, what expectations? I mean, we had expectations, but we try to be very mellow as parents, you know. It's like, if they fail, that's okay, you know, try again next time. But he perceived it differently. Yeah?
I don't know if this is the right time to break in, but I attended this wanted to attend the session because I teach online for BYU Idaho, and I am seeing anxiety skyrocketing in my students. But the one thing I don't see here is the most recent case of anxiety that I've seen is just simply intimidating assignments. They don't feel that they can. Would that be another reason, the general reason?
Absolutely, yeah. This list is certainly not comprehensive. If they, and I think that probably could maybe fit into the concept of performance, that they don't feel that they're up to it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, exactly. That they don't
lack of self-confidence.
So that okay.
Absolutely, a lack of self-confidence could definitely increase anxiety. And so our son, even though we hadn't said, "Well, you better do this," he perceived it that way. And reality is meaningless. It's our perception of reality that drives everything. And so if your students think that you are this overly demanding person, even though, well, I'm not overly demanding, if they think that, then it doesn't matter. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to kind of help with that. This is one of my favorite stories in the New Testament, and you'll know what it is just by looking at the picture. Jesus is on the Sea of Galilee with his disciples, and storms on the Sea of Galilee were pretty frequent, pretty severe. And you remember what happened when the storm happened. It's getting going, and what's Jesus doing? And this is after, right? He's asleep. He even had a little pillow that he found. He's asleep on a pillow, and I can see this situation. I really believe that in the hereafter, there's going to be these giant rooms with these huge screens. You can call up any scene, from the scriptures to watch. And this is on my top 10 easy that I want to see. Because I want to see, because these were real people. And so can you picture, the boat starts rocking a little bit, a few waves coming in, and they're like, it's going to be fine. And pretty soon the storm gets more intense, and they're going, well, what do we do? Well, we should talk to the Lord. What's he doing? He's asleep. Well, I'm sure he'll wake up, because this is getting pretty rough. And the waves are crashing. He's getting soaked. His pillow's probably drenched. He's still asleep over there. Like, I gotta wake up. You wake him up. I'm not gonna wake him up. Can you see that going back and forth? Well, you tell him. And at some point they just have to, because they literally think they're going to die. And these were experienced mariners as well. They had been on boats. This wasn't their first time on a boat. They really thought they were going to die, so they'd wake him. Master, carest thou not that we perish? Which is just the dumbest question. You don't care that we're dying? And you guys don't even get me at all, do you? You have any idea why I'm here, what I'm about? And so he probably wakes up, wipes the sleep from his eyes, and he just gets up and peace be still. Instantly, it's calm. I mentioned the clouds disappearing, full moon, even though it was half moon time, full moon and stars and everything, and they were astonished. Man, who is this? Which answered the previous question, right? They didn't know who they were dealing with. So, problem, why was Jesus sleeping? Was he going to die in the storm? Did he know that? Yes, he knew that. He knew exactly where he was going to die. It was going to be sometime later on the cross. He said, this sea isn't going to take me. We're not going to rewrite history and say the Savior died and drowning in the Sea of Galilee. No, the Messiah dies on the cross on Calvary. He knew that. And that drove his peace. He said, I know this is what it's about. The disciples didn't know that. So their anxiety was sky high in that moment. So Jesus had two options at that point. He could have taught them more about what he was about, and so as the waves are crashing and the boat is sinking, and say, okay, let's just sit down. We're going to talk for a little bit about my role and my mission. I'm going to try to help you through your anxiety by understanding better about who I am. I'm going to teach you this. It could take a few hours, so really, gear up, because we might drown by then. But I'm going to try to teach you that, helping them internally resolve that anxiety. Well, that wasn't the time for that. He was going to teach them later. So what did he do? Just calm the storm. I'll calm the storm now. I'll teach you later. Okay, I'll teach you later, so that the next time something like this happens, you may not react with so much anxiety. As teachers, you're kind of in a similar situation to that. Because your students that have chronic anxiety, they need long-term management strategies. They're not going to, and you can't do that for them. You can't say, let's stop class, okay, and sit down with a student who has a particular anxiety issue. Okay, come over here, let's sit knee to knee here, and let's talk about some cognitive behavioral principles of anxiety. Let's say, really, what is it? Tell me about your mother, those sort of things, right? Let's really get into what's going on here with you. You can't do that. And not only do you not have the time, but it's not your role. Okay, you have other people, hopefully, in your schools, and if you don't, then their parents should have access to people who can help them do that. So, like I said, this involves counseling and other intervention, but it's not inside your control. You guys control the storm, okay? That's your job, is you guys can control the storm. It's a short-term management strategy. Calming the storm didn't necessarily, it reduced their anxiety in the moment. Did it make them less anxious people? Probably not, but there was time for that later. And the difference is that's within your control. I deal with this all the time as a psychologist, people coming in and they're saying, I want this other person to change. I'm like, then get them in here, because there's nothing we can do about that with you and I sitting in the room. I'll feel better when that person changes. I said, then you're never going to feel better, because that's absolutely out of your control. Elder Clark today, which was, what an amazing educator, holy cow. The man's a genius, and that was such a great presentation. As the woman who had been abused for so many years, I deal with that a fair amount as well. And well, when the perpetrator apologizes, then I'll be free of this. I'm like, then you will never, ever be free of that. You just won't. You have to decide this is your life. You take action. We were driving with my sisters last night. Two of my sisters are in town. My younger sister, whose oldest is a senior, just graduated, and they're having some struggles, and she was asking for some advice. And basically, I just said, she said, I'm afraid I'm just going to screw her up forever. I already have. I said, no, this is in her court now. I said, if you and I are hanging on to stuff our parents did 20 years ago, that is on us. That's on us. You can't keep pointing back. If they hadn't done this 20 years ago, I wouldn't be the way I am now. I've had 20 years to make different decisions. So, I'm not saying people aren't accountable for what they do, but we have to take accountability for ourselves. That's critical. These are 4 things that I identified that I think can increase anxiety in students. These are things that you can do differently. And we'll go over one by one. First is being harsh. Second is being cryptic. Third is being oppositional. And fourth is being inflexible. Okay. At the end of this, I'll give you my email address, and so if you want these slides, you can have them. You can email me and get them. If you don't, or you can take pictures or write frantically, whatever you want to do. I don't care, but it doesn't matter to me. Okay, so harsh. Let's see what this is. I said being angry, resentful, sarcastic, snippy with your students. Kind of that edge to that. When I did my pre-doctoral internship in Portland, Oregon, we had 2 main supervisors. One was very kind, and one was very abrupt. Guess how many times I went to her for advice? I didn't. I don't even know what she had to teach. When I had a problem, I went to the other guy. Because I sensed that kindness from him. I sensed that approachability. I learned a lot from him. I'm sure she had a lot to teach me, but it just didn't feel, she didn't feel approachable. And I think if your students perceive you as unapproachable, if they perceive you as angry or short-tempered or things like that, that is an automatic distance that you've placed there. And that's going to increase their anxiety because you make their grades. I don't want to, disappoint or tick off my teacher today because she already seems a little angry. The remedy is to be kind. There's Elder Worthland. Devin mentioned I've written a couple books, and I just submitted one yesterday to my editor that hopefully, they told me they'll publish it next April if they like it, so we'll see. I hate hitting send. That's anxiety because I'm like, it's done, I'm like, as I'm reviewing it again, I should change that, and I could do that for 10 more months. So Elder Worthland says, when we are filled with kindness, we are not judgmental. The Savior taught, judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. He also taught that with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. But you ask, what if people are rude? Love them. If they are obnoxious, love them. But what if they offend? Surely I must do something then. Love them. Wayward, the answer is the same. Be kind, love them. That's the kindness right there. And you could say, but that student doesn't deserve kindness because he is just a turd and a real piece of work. And Elder Worthland's response is just love him. It's the way the Savior interacts with us. We come to him with all kinds of problems and years of disobedience. And when we come to him and say, I'm so sorry, he doesn't say, well, we'll talk about this because you've been a real jerk to me for the last 10 years, so I'll think about this. No, he's just embrace. Just come, let's fix this. That's how we have to be. It's hard. It's hard. Being cryptic, this is not being clear with your expectations or switching them midstream. You know, oh, I changed my mind. We're going to do it different this way. Or I changed my mind about how the grades are going to work and stuff like that. Oh, don't ever do that. It's horrible. It's horrible. Be clear from the beginning and stick to your guns. And if you were wrong, then just be wrong. Change it when you have the opportunity to change it, but not midstream. I'll tell you a story. So about 6 years ago, my wife said, let's go to this indoor cycling class, spin class, right? And I did, and it was horrible. It was so hard, but I kind of liked it. And so I started going very regularly. But what I hated, and there were probably about 5 different teachers I'd go to at my gym, and some of them were great, but some of them, they would say, okay, we're going to, for the next minute, we're going to sprint out of the saddle. And so I think, okay, so in my mind I'm thinking, how much energy can I expend to sprint out of the saddle for 1 minute? Because I still have 30 more minutes in the saddle after that, right? And so I go, and here comes a minute, we're still going. It's 90 seconds, we're still going. I'm like, come on, you know, don't do that to me. If it's a minute, then make it a minute. And I got so frustrated that when one of the guys quit, I went and got certified and became an indoor soccer instructor. And I did that for about 2 years until my life got too busy. But I was militant about, if I said a minute, it was a minute. And I would explain to them from the very beginning, I said, okay, we're going to climb 5 hills. They're going to be this long each time. This is the kind of tension you're going to have on your knob and stuff like that. It was actually pretty fun. I miss it, but my plate was this big and my life was this big, and I had to cut something. But that's the remedy: is be clear with your expectations and make sure that they know what you want. Oppositional. And I have a picture of an Eagle Scout Board of Review up here. We have 5 sons, and they've all been in the scouting program, and 4 of them were Eagle Scouts. And so the Board of Review, that's the final thing. You've done everything you need to do, and now you go and sit in front of these 3 people, and what do? They make it feel like you're not going to get it. That drives me crazy. Like, of course they're going to give it to you. They can't wait to give it to you. They go, I don't know, we're going to really look at this, you know. But they walked in from the beginning, know that you're going to get this thing. And I don't like that. I had professors in my undergrad that it's almost like I had to worship at the throne of their knowledge before they would impart. You know, it was like you have to. It was this distance or almost competition. I didn't care for it. My graduate student professors were so much better than that. It was very collegial, and I loved that. They said, "Sure, I'll share what I know." Why wouldn't I? That's what you're here for, right? That was the difference. 21 years ago, I was over in the David O. McKay building defending my dissertation. And I was sitting there in front of 5 PhDs who were brilliant and a lot smarter than I am, but they had no interest in putting me through my paces. They wanted to know if I knew what I said I did in the dissertation. If I knew, since I used canonical regression to analyze the data, if I knew what the heck that meant. I barely know now, but I did back then, and I was able to explain it to them. And they wanted to know why I chose these methods and why I did this. And that's all they wanted to know. It was nothing of, oh, I don't know, you might not graduate. These last 10 years may have been for nothing, David. You know, you might walk out of here and be ABD, but it wasn't like that at all. They said, just say congratulations. Because I knew what I was talking about. I was ready. I'm sorry, be selfless. Don't make it about you. Okay? It has to be about your students. If your teaching is more about you than about your students, then you need to reconsider. It has to be more about that. And last is being inflexible, which is just as it sounds, not willing to negotiate. I know you have to set standards, I get that, but I think there can be some flexibility in there. Parable of the Talents is what came to mind. Remember, 3 guys, people, I don't know if they're men or women, 3 people, 1 gets 5, 1 gets 2, 1 gets 1. Person with 5, how many does he make? 5 more. How about the guy with 2? Makes 4 altogether, right? How about the guy with 1? Couldn't do anything with it, buried in the backyard, maybe made a little map, see what, didn't lose it, that sort of thing. The guy with 5 and the guy with 2, what was their reward? Or how did the words compare? They were equal. They were identical. Even though one guy produced considerably less and the other guy, all things considered. He got the exact same reward because he did with what he had, he magnified that. He doubled it, right? And I bet if the guy with 1 had come back with 2, he'd have got the exact same reward. Even though it's a fifth of what the other guy came in with the 10 guy, he did the same thing. And with our students, you have to recognize that. You have to be flexible in that because they're going to come to you at very different stages. And if you apply a one-size-fits-all approach to them, some of them aren't going to be able to hit that. And that's going to drive their anxiety. You know, I can't do that. And I know that makes it more difficult for you as teachers to do these kind of individualized things. I know that the public school system doesn't often allow you to do that, but just try to keep that in mind when you do. This is the last thing here, and I took this from Teaching in the Savior's Way, which is the manual that the church produces about them, about teaching. It says, when you think about the Savior's way of teaching, what comes to mind? Can you see him teaching the multitudes by the sea, speaking privately with the woman at the well, or blessing a little child? As you read about him in the scriptures, what do you notice about his way of helping others learn and grow? What does teaching in the Savior's way mean to you? And you say, well, Brother Morgan, that's great, but I teach in public schools. How do I teach in the Savior's way? Absolutely teach in the Savior's way. Not only do I think we need to teach in the Savior's way, I think we need to bank in the Savior's way. I think we need to do personal training in the Savior's way. I think we need to do custodial in the Savior's way. It's all about doing it like he would do it. So absolutely you can do that. And you should. The 3 years he had in his mortal ministry, which is very little time, all things considered, most of what he did was teach. He was teaching all the time. And that's what you've chosen to do for your professions, is to basically do what the Savior thought was most important for him, was to be an educator. And you can emulate his ways. I don't care what situation you're in. The 4 things that we talked about, the remedies to that are all Savior's characteristics. That's what he is. And as you do that, I think you're going to find greater success. And I think you'll help your students. I don't think any of us are going to feel anxiety around the Savior. I just don't think we will. I think we'll just be thrilled to be in his presence, with his love and compassion. I want to, this is the, if you would like to get in touch with me, you can reach me there. I have my website, ldspsychologist.com, and my email is phd@gmail.com. But I just want to bear witness to you that I know the gospel of Jesus Christ is true. The solutions to all of your problems are in the gospel. I know that. If I'm wrong, get out of this life and you say, Brother Morgan, you were wrong, then come talk to me afterwards and I'd be happy to talk, but I really, really, truly believe that. They're not just laying right there in front of you in 1 Nephi, but they'll come as you study and as you seek knowledge and inspiration. The Lord will reveal those things to you. It'll come through the gospel. And as you try to teach in the Savior's way, I think that your students will have an overall better experience. And they'll learn as he wants them to learn too. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.